You know, if there's one question I get asked more than any other, more even than if you were a transformer, would you need car or life insurance? That question would have to be, Mark, does the tiny Canon Sure Shot 90U punch above its weight in the point-and-shoot world, or will its diminutive size leave you wanting more? Well, today we're going to try and answer that question. Another refuge from the photographic detritus of the end of the film era, and the Canon Sure Shot 90U is the focus of today. This was one of a range of cameras that Canon brought out in the early 2000s, and they all follow the same basic formula. The main difference with them is the minor styling variations and the focal ranges. I have this 80U that's obviously for girls because it's pink, while the green livery of the 90U is more for the climate-conscious virtue signalers out there. They had 105, 115U, and yes, those numbers do relate to the longest focal length, with 90 sitting kind of in the middle. As you can see, the 80U has the same form factor as this, except for a different lens, which is a bit confusing, and of course it's made even more confusing by the fact that, like Pentax, Canon seem to arbitrarily pick different names for their cameras depending on what part of the world you're in. So the Sure Shot 90U is the same as the Prima Zoom 90U and in the same form factor as the 80U. Different names, but they couldn't be bothered changing the manual, so make of that what you will. Except, of course, they did call it Autoboy in Japan because, well, who doesn't want a robot boy? I mean, imagine a kid that you could put to work in dangerous and toxic environments without having to worry about pesky little childhood ailments like death and amputated limbs. But I digress. Whatever the name, the camera's the same, and it was designed to do the same thing. Slide into your pocket or your handbag if you have the pink 80U, and then just sort of pull it out at parties or your compulsory Kontiki Club 18 to 35 sex holiday before sending the film off to get developed so that you can relive those precious moments in all their grainy glory. Of course, by 2003, digital was already kicking on the door, so you could take those spontaneous dick pics without the embarrassment of picking up the incriminating evidence from the spotty kid at Chemist Warehouse. But your Auntie Joan, who was still firmly locked in the analog era and taking more salubrious shots, I'm sure would have found this a pretty miraculous device. I mean, look at the size of it. It's difficult to believe that you can even fit a full-size roll of film in there, but magically you can, and this even takes photos. How good are those photos? Well, we'll see in a minute, but I have to admit my main reason for reaching out for this particular camera, it was the form factor. It's small, it's light, it's discreet, while still fitting quite comfortably in the hand. It's also remarkably refined. I actually like the design. By this stage, cameras had really evolved from being chunky gobs of grey plastic, and in this case even escaped the later trend for a champagne colour palette to make it look like fake titanium. The trypophobic among us might balk at the circles, but hey, that just reminds me of my favourite camera, my Olympus Pen F, and my car, which have both been forensically analysed on this channel before. This might not have the same build quality of the pen, though arguably BMW did skimp a bit on some of the trim on my Mini, but it's a pretty camera, and to someone as shallow as me, well, actually that does mean something. It comes in very light at just 185 grams without batteries and feels nice in the hand, albeit a bit plasticky. But you know where this is going. We don't feature cameras on this channel as show ponies for your display cabinet. This is a camera to be used and abused in the hands of someone probably even less skilled than your Auntie Joan. Though you'll notice I did pick up the green one, so despite its petiteness, I could still wield it with confident masculinity. Well, I hope I don't chop off the heads of group photos like your Auntie Joan, but I'm sure I'll manage to make a few mistakes along the way as I took this little camera for a walk through People's Park in Shanghai, loaded with a roll of Ilford HP5. something of a shirt. Probably not really, but it could be a good test of the macro. So let's change the mode. The little arrow moves to flower. Oh, zooming in. All right, that's going to try news flash. I was right. All right, let's take it off macro. Half a roll down, and what can I say about this camera? Well, you can't complain about the size. I know I keep going on about it, but this is tiny, even for a point and shoot, and on that basis, it's a very friendly and unthreatening camera, both for the user and the people that you train your lens at. It's certainly not overcomplicated either. It has 4 modes that let you shoot different types of subjects. Interpretive dancers, paparazzi, Superman in a helmet, flowers, and respiratory therapists are all at your fingertips. If you want to get a bit less specific and maybe a little bit more accurate, the moving subject mode tries to do its best version of continuous focus with the reasonable warning not to get your hopes up too high on that one. It also has that ubiquitous slow shutter mode for nighttime flash portraits, as well as a dedicated portrait mode, which will automatically zoom in and turn on the flash. It does macro if having the zoom locked up and actually allowing you to get as close as 45 centimeters counts as macro. And the real-time function, as far as I can tell, is just another continuous autofocus mode. Honestly, that's the one thing that I struggled with these shots. It's not that the autofocus didn't work. In fact, as you can see here, most of the shots were in focus, but it just wasn't confident. Much of the time I found myself trying to find high contrast parts of the scene, particularly to point at so I could get that green light. It's a particular problem once it's zoomed in and squinting through that tiny f10.5 aperture. I suspect that's going to irritate your Auntie Joan as much as it did me, but your Auntie Joan is probably less likely to think carefully about the focus point, so might just let the camera do its thing rather than try and work out if the camera is genuinely focused on what you want it to. I can see lots of blurred faces and sharp backgrounds in Joan's photo albums. The Canon Sure Shot 90 probably isn't going to fully resolve that. It does have that wonderful point and shoot characteristic of aggressively defaulting to flash at every opportunity, and while it does have the standard modes of on, off, auto and red eye, there's no auto non-red eye function. Honestly, I'd probably never use it, but it's an interesting omission. One thing that's an interesting addition though is plus or minus 1.5 stops of exposure compensation. Not that Auntie Joan is really meant to think about these things. I've always taken the on-camera flash is evil stance with these devices in the past, and I've tried to battle the tendencies of the camera, but these days, and with this puckered aperture range, I just played ignorant amateur and I let it do its thing. Anyway, harsh flash seems to be trending now, so I may as well go all Gen Alpha and no cap jump on this clout wagon and start using my lens loot as lifestyle drip rather than, grind tech. Feels kid, man. Anyway, enough of this cringe energy. Let's get back to speaking English so Auntie Joan can understand me and get the best out of this Canon Sure Shot 90U. If there is anything to learn here, well, I still had half an hour and half a roll left to finish. Okay, the flash came on for that one automatically. Let's turn it off. There we go. Now, that was the coward's form of street photography. Shoot from behind when they can't see you. I guess the question is, what can I do? Oh, that's nice. interesting. It is definitely better light here with the silver sides of the plants. Are they water lilies? They seem a bit high to be water lilies. The only thing about it is just a mass of plants and trees. There's nothing human in the scene, but then does there have to be? Does there always have to be something human? It's just that designerly aesthetic. The tiredness of it is pretty good. The cigarette butt in the middle. I do actually have a thing about taking photos of cigarette butts. I don't know if Lightroom can AI keyword my photographs, but I'm sure if I put cigarette butts in, I'd get a bucket load of photos. What's 6 plus 2? 8 shots left. I mean, honestly, those lily pads are filthy. Isn't anyone gonna actually vacuum them? And then we have two people who would be good to capture, particularly if I can keep her reflection in. Now, I don't think this is a great shot compositionally, honestly. I think what makes this one interesting, if I can reach in and I can get a little bit higher and separate the tree branches from the lily pads, is that the light on the lily pads themselves make them a natural point of focus, certainly a natural point of interest. And these people walking behind me are wondering why I'm talking to myself. It's a little bit more quiet from when I was last here. Blind date corner. Now that dude is so cool, and I don't mind using the flash if I have to. And turn that flash off now so I don't forget. So there you go with the Canon Sure Shot or Prima Zoom 90 or even Autoboy N90, an Autoboy that one day wants to grow up and become a real camera. And you know what? This one actually does the job. And it also does it in a slightly more refined way than some of my other point and shoots, by which I mean the gears don't grind quite as loudly as your Auntie Joan's hips when you're zooming in or out or the film is winding on. I was shooting 400 speed black and white film, and on a cloudy day I don't think I'd want to go much slower than that. I'm definitely not going to be putting Ilford Pan F50 in this thing. Still, I've had worse experiences with point and shoots missing moments, particularly once you start trying to shoot at the long end of the telephoto range. I think the fast film and modest zoom range of the camera meant that even when I was battling the f10.5 aperture, it managed to produce the shot. That's better than some cameras that I pretty much treat as slow 38mm primes. This doesn't go wider than 38mm either, nor does it ever open up enough to get you that blurry bokeh. With this one, well, that's just about as good as it gets. You do get some fall off, but you're not going to be drooling over the buttery out of focus areas of this camera. Look, I had literally no expectations about this camera, and so can comfortably say that they were exceeded. I'd even go so far as to say that I have a few keepers. Not these ones, obviously. This little Canon can't guarantee a good shot, and it's pretty clear that the more decisive your moment, the small aperture, slow autofocus, and autoflash will probably band together to frustrate your quest for sharpness. But if you handle it with a bit of thought and deliberation, it does produce sharp images. Well, relatively. If you look at this one, you've got your classic travel snapshot, and you know what? It's a good effort. It's very sharp throughout most of the frame. Look at that bark and the expression of the lady. It's only when you look at the corners that you can see the mushiness around the edge of the frame and the tendency to flare in high contrast situations. I didn't shoot in color, but I do think you'd see some color fringing in the foliage. But then again, how much, since you're likely to be putting in fairly low resolution film like Ultramax in there? The fact that I now have seen the results and I would happily put color film in it is probably the best endorsement of this device given the cost of that stuff now. Let's find 6 shots that show the Sure Shot isn't going to shatter your shapely Shanghai shutter moments, and let these be your shimmery showcase for today. And not bad, Canon, not bad. Given the time constraints, the camera constraints, and the limitations of this particular operator, I'm more than happy. I was very nearly going to put this one in because as the first photo of the roll, it's already demonstrated how you can get a sharp architectural shot out of this humble device, but really, it's just a building. Yes, this is a building too. And while I'm tempted to crop the top because there's not much going on up there, I like the shapes and the guy on the scaffolding. Most of the pictures do have people in them. I love this one of the old couple and the building behind them, even though again the framing is a bit off and I just wished I'd pointed that lens up a bit higher. Again, this probably could have benefited from a crop, this time at the bottom, as long as it doesn't make the frame look too cramped. I do like human reactions, so this one had to make the cut, though I struggled with these two. In the end, they felt more like a pair than individual shots, so let's keep them both in. That only leaves room for one more image, and I figured that I needed to capture the wonder of nature in the form of a highly curated lily pond. This was a struggle, but I ended up picking this one because, hey, it's got people, nature, and architecture in them. 3 for 1. And that, in a very compact nutshell, is the Canon Sure Shot 90U. What did you think? If I'm to describe it in objective terms, it doesn't sound like a great prospect for a quality camera. The tiny aperture and limited functionality don't distinguish it among a crowd of similar late model film zooms. But I have to admit, I was pleasantly surprised by the final results. And in the end, isn't that what matters? It's small, so you can always have it with you, and it punches well above its weight. Of course, you might disagree, so do let me know in the comments. You may also have some recommendations of other hidden gems in the panoply of plastic point-and-shoots. Give us your recommendations, and if you haven't liked or subscribed yet, please do, and share this widely so everyone can find out about the camera and push up the second-hand prices. The Canon Sure Shot 90U will have a place in my bag for some time to come. Is it better than the 80U? Well, I have both, and I should probably do a direct comparison sometime. Let me know if you're interested, though I suspect you won't see a huge amount of difference except for the focal range, and of course the 80U is pink. Being serious for a moment, as I record this video, I can't help but notice that I'm now hitting around 4,000 subscribers. What you're all doing here, I don't know, but I am genuinely humbled, and being the desperately insecure person that I am, incredibly grateful for the attention. I can't really think of a cool way to celebrate 4,000 followers. Maybe I'll save that for when I hit 5,000. In the meantime, thanks for sticking to the end of another video and for sticking with this channel. and I will catch you again later.